Hi, Paul.
Hello, good morning, Giles. How-
Why
how
can't
are
I
you?
hear you?
Oh, can you not hear
No,
me?
no, it's me. Don't worry. I am now done.
You're good, are you? Okay, perfect.
Nice to see you.
Uh, oh, Steve is joining us as well. That's nice.
Oh, fantastic.
Excellent. Good. Yes. Hi, hi, Steve. How are you? Oh, we can't. I don't think we can hear you. Hang on. I'm just going to let Judith in. Hello, Judith. Hi.
Hi.
I'm just sorting out Steve. Steve's joining us from Singapore, but his audio isn't working at the moment. I wonder if Steve, can you hear me? Give me a nod if you can hear me. You can hear me. Perfect. Okay. Then if you just go into your in your team settings, there should be three little dots at the top of your screen somewhere that tell you the all your other settings, and you go into device settings. And if when you're in device settings, just check your microphone is on the right microphone you want it to be on. Oh dear. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Perfect. Bit muffled, but yeah, I can hear you now, Steve.
Now I can't hear you.
Oh, you cannot hear me.
No, I can now. I can.
Perfect.
These AirPods, they cost about £1,000 million, and then they don't work. Anyway, now it's good. Good to see you.
We have so many issues with AirPods actually, because like whenever we're doing digital stuff, we usually ask the actors to put in-ears in, and they tend to be, oh, I've put my earpods straight in. But then trying to get it to use the earpods sound, but not the earpods for a mic, is essentially completely impossible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Always very wary of earpod microphones walking around.
I'm sorry I didn't get to see because it's middle of the night. I wasn't able to had so many different things. I wasn't able to see the performance. Did it go okay?
It went very well, Steve. It was very,
I saw the recording of the dress rehearsal or the previous session, which looked like it was going to be great. So I look forward to the recording.
It came together. Sorry, Giles, you're going to say something.
It was really fun to do. That was
it was good. It worked well. I thought I recorded it all, and it lasted about, surprisingly, I think the intention was it would be about 15 minutes, but it's about 29, almost 26. Yeah, half an hour. So and half an hour felt like 15 minutes. So it's got to be good, hasn't it?
I'm sorry, everyone.
No, it was very good, and we also had an audience participant lined up. Okay, Graham's going to join us. Graham in now, and Lucy as well. Wonderful. I think I'm getting everybody in. There we are. Hello, Lucy. Hi, Graham.
Hi, Paul. Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Good to see you. Good to see you. Steve is also here from Singapore. Steve is joining us, which is great. Wonderful. Brilliant. Are we expecting anybody else, Lucy? I think that's about it, really.
No, I think this is us.
Great. Okay. Well, I'm recording this. I hope that's okay. I just need to make some notes and things from it. So I've got the record on. I've got about an hour with you. So it's kind of the final session really for this, and it's been an absolute pleasure for me. I've really enjoyed it, I have to say. It's been thoroughly enjoyable working with you, and we've had, it's been a really concentrated period of sessions, which is really interesting for us, because we have on some occasions spread them out, and sometimes on this occasion put them much closer together. And you've taken a very focused approach on one scene, but more about that later on. I want to hear you talk today, so that's the plan. So I see Tom is also going to join us. Tom Truscott, who's our technical research assistant, he's joining us to have a listen in. Hello, Tom. Hi. Tom's at university, clearly.
Good morning, everyone. Well done for the performance on Friday. Excellent. Really enjoyed it.
Great. So we'll go straight. I mean, I've got some questions for you, and they're what we're doing is we produce and Steve will also help me with the questions, I'm sure, as we go along. But we're doing a kind of case study on the project, and a lot of it is also about your feedback. So I'm really going to stop talking and ask you some questions. But I sort of really enjoyed it all, so I wanted to express that. So I guess reading my questions, which all sound rather dry and formal now, I'm trying to sort of put them, frame them in a way that they get you more excited than. So I think it would be good, just very briefly, if you want to just give me a little picture. Maybe Lucy might be able to do this, or I'm sure you all can, but just in terms of where you've, as a company, when you back in before March 2020, what kind of things were you doing, and how did you sort of move into the technical thing, or had it happened earlier, or that sort of thing? What happened?
So pre-pandemic, we thought we were moving into a sort of doing more and more digital work, but really, I mean, we weren't. we were still site-specific theatre producers. Very occasionally in theatres, and we were starting to incorporate a little bit more video work. So we'd done a production of Brave New World where we had a sort of, what was it, Giles, 6 meters by 4 meters, like a massive LCD screen that parts of the show were on. And we'd done some work with projection and production mapping, and we'd done a couple of shows that involved like multiple screens with stuff on. But really, compared to what we're doing now, it was a totally different world. Interestingly, just before the show we did, just before everything kicked off and lockdown came, Graham was in playing the part of a computer, and so that was our very first go at ever doing green screen. And we had a lovely day we spent filming, and realised at the end of the day when we went to edit it that the fluorescent lights had been on for that, and it was a sunny day, so we didn't even notice the lights were on while we were filming. And then of course everything was strobing, and we had the brilliant our director Tash rather brilliantly just incorporated that as a stylistic choice. But really it was just an error. But I mean, we didn't imagine at that point that green screening and working this way would become such a massive part of what we now do.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting to know where the sort of the history of all of this, how it all happened. So I think just sort of following on from that. So building on that experience and all the work you've done since up until you joining us on the residency. What in a sense? I mean, I gave you a brief introduction. We all gave you a brief introduction about the project and sent you information. What were you hoping to? What when you heard about our project? What were you hoping to achieve, or what were your thoughts about it?
I think one of the things that was really exciting for us about the project was that we're in this period of Innovate funding at the moment as well. And so we have our rep company with us 6 months to play with. And what we wanted to do in that time was to kind of feel that we really did have some time where we weren't making a sort of commercial show we were going to sell, and we were also putting some kind of innovation and R&D time in. And I think what I thought was particularly exciting when I sort of first met with you, Paul, and you showed me the clips of your lockdown Telepresence project, was just that kind of sense of 3D space. And actually, we've done a lot with virtual backgrounds in Zoom at the beginning, and then evolving into green screens, and it's how you navigate 3D space and depth and being able to touch things, and is one of the sort of things to kind of keep exploring for us. And I also really love that, not that we still particularly explored it here, I really love the way on that project that you were controlling it on the iPad and had, a sort of, a friend in, an audience member in who didn't know what was going to happen. And I think that, that little experiment we did at the very end where we got Guy in, I think is really exciting to be able to mix that very carefully choreographed, practice, very technically competent experience. And then when you just put that rogue agent in, who who could do or say anything to disrupt that. I think that's really sort of artistically interesting, but also interesting in a kind of more commercial producer sense of what kind of experiences we could make for audiences.
Yeah, it's curious, isn't it, Lucy, that we've spent like 15 months now doing, I don't even know how many digital shows. It's like 10 or 11 or something, isn't it, of various kind of sizes. And you know, I think we like to think that we're using some really expensive software, some fantastic actors who are incredibly experienced at this in what is a relatively new art form, and what we're making is really exciting. And then what audience members remember is oh, I saw that read through of Romeo and Julieta, and these two actors were in the same room. And you're like, right, okay, we've spent tens of hours putting together a really beautifully made like scene of Romeo and Juliet with like 6 actors on screen together, incredibly hard like rehearsal and technical process. And actually what they're excited about is that 2 actors happen to live together. You're like, this is so annoying.
Yeah.
I think what Lucy's saying about that physical space is really exciting, because you know the digital theatre is really exciting because it's, you know, gives you so much more design freedom and ability to kind of experiment with stuff and make things look interesting. But until this project, like, we've always had that slightly ham-fisted thing of, oh, I'm going to pass you this piece of paper, and you pass it over the camera, or like, I've got a prop but you haven't. Do you know what I mean? You're finding ways to, like when we did Duchess of Malfi, and there's a point at which Dharmesh threw a bag of money to Graham, and we, you know, and it, like, actually it worked fine, but you end up having to kind of gloss over these things really quickly because we can't make them feel real. So it was amazing to be able to have that opportunity to say, well, look, this is what are we doing with actual physical things in physical spaces.
And, you know, we've worked a lot with, you know, a lot of our actors will offer we'll either give them 2 screens or we'll say, do you want extra screens? But we've always done it from the end of thinking, oh, so then when you're in Zoom, you could see gallery view and you could see yourself. And actually just that actually using the screens at the sides, I think, is actually like relatively, of all the things that we sort of supply people with, if you've got space, it's actually not a very difficult thing to kind of add, but actually really does open up what you can do and how you can perform quite a lot.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Graham, but like when we're doing digital shows, I tend to have like marks just around my room where you decide, okay, this character is there, and then I'm talking to this character there, and actually, like, you then are not able to monitor yourself or see what the other person is doing. So actually being able to look at a screen over there, it's like, oh.
Yeah.
Was it strange? I keep meaning to ask. Is it strange looking at yourself sideways?
No, it's a lot more liberating in some ways, because there's always the temptation to want to look, to be drawn towards the camera, and at the same time kind of look at the monitor, and often that disparity is glaringly obvious. So actually, the whole medium seems full of sleight of hand and illusion in a way. So if you can find new ways of accommodating that, and you know, Giles says he's got little bits of tape on the floor. I mean, I had bits of script, you know, pasted to the walls all around me. So it was a question of having to kind of evolve a kind of working space, be your own technician, manage all the, you know, technology and resources, but also think about your own physical journey through a show, which is fascinating, because it made me realize more and more how much embodiment or a body memory, physical memory of a process is an important part of learning for me of the show. And so much of that is about interaction with other performers as well, and repetition. You know, I'm not used to working in a screen-based medium. I love the kind of tactile nature of theatre, but this hybrid is quite peculiar in that your journey through a show, and be it your kind of emotional journey or your physical embodied journey is kind of, you have to construct it yourself. So what doing this project made me realize is the last few shows, obviously, that we've been working on with the digital rep and with Time Machine, it's been very much kind of focused towards the camera, and you get used to that language quite quickly. I think in the process of evolution of making a show and learning a show, you develop a language, and that's what we've been doing with creation over the last few shows, and it's been very much geared to production and presentation. And this was a real opportunity to step back a little bit and think differently and try and unlearn some of the things that we've unconsciously learned over the last year, I think, by not working so camera centrically, by thinking in this 3D space.
That's really interesting to hear that. Really interesting.
Can I just ask?
Yeah.
So,
Sure, Steve.
when you were saying about full of sleight of hand and illusion, and obviously your show was wonderful in playing with all that. Do you think is it something? Is there something seductive, if you like, about this kind of what we're calling a telepresence state, and all that sort of, in a sense, necessitates, it seduces you to kind of, we've got to do that, and what do you think? Kind of, is it because it is sort of illusory? It sort of means you start to, all your kind of creativity and imagination goes into that illusory force, or in terms of kind of more straight sort of drama and dramaturgy. Would you be likely to, if you were to carry on with this, maybe move away from the trickery and into kind of straighter, if you like, or more conventional kind of theatrical pieces?
Well, I think one of the things that we've kind of learned over the course of doing the shows is that attempts to create a kind of naturalism, a sense of naturalism, are doomed to fail in a way.
Okay.
And also that is the domain of film, the film language that we understand, which is all about driving the audience towards a hyper realism. And we need to dip into a different kind of world, I think. And when you're making theatre, you're personally speaking, the great pleasure for me is about being able to understand the mechanics and play with the mechanics and the meta language of performance, if you like, the common shared understanding about the rules and the rules of engagement. Now, with this, I think those rules are indistinct, and I find that really interesting, because people don't necessarily know what the rules are of this, and that was particularly true for me as an audience watching my first Zoom experience, which was The Tempest, presented by Creation, and in doing the Time Machine, that you're kind of making up the language, and the audience are kind of learning with you. So you have to kind of teach a methodology, I think. For me, I mean, my personal experience, and the others might feel differently about this, is that over the course of the last few shows, the technology we've used has become more sophisticated. Our competence has become more elaborate. And Romeo and Juliet was a hugely elaborate, ambitious, and beautiful piece of work. But I kind of can't help feeling, and we haven't really kind of evaluated this, that the audience's expectations had just kind of grown massively, and somehow there was something that was kind of lost. It's like they're chasing these expectations, and I'm really curious about that. And for me, this, I really enjoyed the play, as I kind of mentioned the other day, playing with the lines and the kind of liminal space of what this form can offer. So to play with what is possible, but also what's not possible, playing with the failure of it. And I think an audience enjoys those moments. And I think an audience really. Actually, I was doing an interview with an embodiment workshop thing with Naomi Smith at Bath Spa, and she asked me, "What are the moments that are most live for you in digital performance? Where's that liveness?" And I said, basically the accidents and where it goes wrong.
Yeah. 'Cause it's interesting when you're playing with all that. Well, here's the card, here's the balls, and passing and all of that. But actually, it kind of struck me. As I said, I was only able to see the sort of dress rehearsal. I couldn't see the performance, but it kind of struck me actually. Oh yeah, it's when it's that you're not really trying to ever get it perfect. It's getting close to perfect, and that so that there's a real pleasure principle from the kind of audience.
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting what you're saying in terms of like a liminal space, because there's also kind of, and working with the different companies. Sorry, I'll shut up in a minute. I don't want to talk too much, but it's actually the kind of the genres that come out are kind of liminal genres, if you like. You'd be unlikely to do it exactly the same on a real stage. But I think kind of what you found there with this kind of the lovely sort of tongue-in-cheek sort of comedy thing, but with kind of lots of sort of import and so on, that was really, really nice. And people like Pigeon, as another company we're working with, are getting into sort of, again, there's a beautiful sort of comedic feel, but they're kind of getting into sort of gothic and magic realism sort of kind of spaces as well. But I think it's interesting how kind of it's kind of a different kind of genre emerges by virtue of the space. Carry on.
No, I was just going to say, I think that liminality, is that a word? I don't know whether we can use that as a word, but I'm gonna go for it. I think it works two ways. Curiously, one of the things that I find frustrating about digital theatre, it's not frustration, it's just a comment, is that like sitting in a theatre as an audience member, I think I would instinctively, maybe that's just because I'm an actor, but I would instinctively, it's not often that you're actually watching the person that's speaking. I think because you get a kind of much more holistic view of a stage, and there's the comment that acting is reacting, and actually it's the participation of a group of people on stage reacting to what one person is saying, which I think is really interesting. And even in vMix, when we've managed to get multiple actors on the screen, because we tend to be using the camera as direct address, I think you get a completely different perspective on how people are reacting to what's being said, and actually just existing in a physical space. And the ability, like there's that little moment when Graham's telling a story in what we did on whatever night it was, Friday night, and the ability for me to look bored by it is something that we actually can't achieve in the style. I'm not saying that the style we've chosen to do digital theatre in is wrong. It's just boredom is unachievable, because the way it looks on stage, it looks like you're not engaging with the show. But actually, once you take the focus of the camera away and you become two people engaging in a different way, then it allows you to do things that I think are emotionally very difficult to do down the lens, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
you
fascinating.
can see as well how close we are to, like, it would only be like another computer in both of your spaces that was also dialed into vMix that had a second camera angle on and a screen, and you could have been looking at each other's faces directly while the audience was seeing the side shot. And so, like, as an evolution of the next thing to try, I think that would be really interesting in terms of like the subtlety of performance that you'd be able to achieve if you could, and then to be able to operate at a sort of junior stage management level to go between those shots and go, now I'm looking at you, now I'm looking at you, now I'm looking at two of you side on, and yeah, that's what we'll try next.
Absolutely. Well, interestingly, just to sort of mention something that I have never experienced this before, but because Graham was using his second monitor as another vMix feed, I was getting nobody else, but I was getting other views of Graham, which was really interesting. I was actually seeing Graham look to that, what was essentially just a preview monitor. I was actually seeing you look at it, and I was seeing that view of that, also that view of your green screen. So just gave me that other. There was anyway. It was really interesting at that moment.
It's interesting you said that, Paul, because it was something like when we did Tempest the very first time in like April, was it, just after the pandemic started? Zoe, the director of that one, the show ended essentially with all the actors removing their virtual backgrounds, because we were still in Zoom in those days, and packing up their green screens, and we all did a conscious kind of moving of our camera angle, so to kind of emphasize the fact that we're just in our own rooms. And it was Zoe's comment was about the kind of we're such stuff that dreams are made on, and the kind of unreality of it. And actually, we've been, I think, quite keen to try and put it in a lot of other shows. And then you get to a rehearsal process so difficult to manage that actually we tend not to, or we put it into the curtain call. But I do think there's something really interesting about that peek behind the curtain. There's a couple of Shakespeare early modern history academics, Gemma Allred and Ben Broadrib. I don't know if I'm allowed to name check people on this, who knows, who come to almost all the shows because they're writing about digital theatre, and in an early modern context, as it were. And I had a long chat with them after Romeo and Juliet, and they spend most of, so they came to see Romeo and Juliet, I think 6 times. But they watched it through twice, and then the rest of the time they were watching it in gallery view in Zoom, so they could see the actors outside of the context of how we were showing the audience. And they find that really interesting because they think it's a different kind of performance level. So I do think that there is a kind of commerciality, if we could harness it, to giving the audience that experience.
It's just getting changed at the side of the stage, though, isn't it? It's,
it is. Yes,
with a lot of what we do, you can see the direct correlation between the digital work and the live work that would be on stage. You know, I don't know, and totally consistently, audiences generally like their favourite shows are the ones things go wrong in. So the same as like that, they love the danger and the liveness of digital work in a theatre. A perfect performance that people will think is brilliant and enjoy. The show where the lighting stops working, or the show when the actor walks on and they forgot to bring the prop dog with them, those are the shows they talk to us about 10 years later. Oh, it was brilliant, and he forgot the dog, and it all improvised, and it was so funny, or oh, it was so amazing, and poor Graham, when everyone kept fainting in 1984, I was there the night when they fainted, and it's that kind of danger and liveness and presence that you get more from something going wrong.
It's breaking the fourth wall, isn't it? It stops being, like people, I think, increasingly, because we've got this concept of going to the West End and sitting in silence in the dark for 2 hours and paying £70 for the privilege, where basically you're just watching a television a long way away with some actors shouting at you. But that feeling of when something goes wrong or an actor talks to you and you genuinely break the fourth wall, it becomes an experience that they can't have on television or at home. And I think that's
it feels unique to that moment in time. That can't be, no one else has had that experience, except for, of course, when we then build mistakes into shows and make them look like mistakes when really they're not. But to an audience member, it feels like this has only happened to me.
And I think there's something about site-specific work, especially, which changes that dynamic engagement with an audience. Anyway, audiences feel more connected to the space and the mechanics of the piece, and that's something that creation audiences have really grown to kind of love. So that relationship with an audience is really critical, I think. And it's how to make more of that in digital work is really,
and I think it's how we've managed to succeed in digital work as well as we have done, is because we've cultivated an audience who are used to thunderstorms in the middle of a show and it being stopped, are used to it being in a strange environment, are used to having to navigate a new landscape to see a piece of work. So I think they are naturally sort of a self-selecting group of people who can cope with broadband going down slightly or momentarily not hearing someone's microphone, and who particularly enjoy the moment when the green screen, when the cards are in the wrong they are naturally people who enjoy that and aren't looking for a kind of perfect production of Chekhov.
But I think there's also a psychological level above this, isn't there, Lucy, that we've talked about for a long time. When we first did, again, The Tempest, just because it's literally the first one we did, is why I kind of think you take a lot of learnings from it. And we put some audience participation in. There's a point at which the lords are being attacked by furies. So Ariel, as a character, said to the audience, right,
Yeah.
Going to the London dungeons and being talked to by an actor. I mean, the fact that I do it for a living all the time is another thing. But when you're at home and you're sat on your sofa and you kind of know no one else can see you. Fine, they can see you if you get put on screen, but you're still protected from them. I think people have got an enormous amount more liberty to join in, and we found it in Time Machine as well, didn't we, Graham? Like, go and get this, and people would run to their kitchens and come back with stuff, and like stuff that they would never dream of doing, even in a real space where there were other people judging them. I don't know what the psychology behind it is, but the freedom of playing in your own house is a really fascinating thing about it.
Yeah, making magic with a random kitchen utensil.
Yeah,
I think that early lockdown as well, audiences, you could really sense the appetite for wanting to kind of engage in activity and connect. I think audience responses are changing perhaps and becoming a bit more sophisticated. Their expectations are different, but with this, what we did on Friday, I thought the Guy's appearance and his willingness and compliance were admirable, and I think that was a really interesting part of the project, being able to engage someone in that space and the rules, and for them not to exactly know the rules, but to be able to play and explore and find. I think, and I said, I know we talked about this after the presentation, but I could really imagine a kind of gallery installation over different sites, or as we mentioned, shop fronts, connected across the country, and being able to engage in a similar activity.
I think there's also a thing about, like, I'd love to be able to try putting someone that doesn't know they're going to be on into the scene, because I think it's great that Guy was pre-prepared and he is the sort of person that is going to interact. And I think the gallery installation, where you can kind of find people who are interested in the process to come and react in it, is great. But I also think it would be lovely just to say, like, just not to tell anybody, just to have 50 people in an audience and to go, that one, and see what. And it might be a disaster because they might clam up, they might be utterly embarrassed, they might never want to speak. But I just think that's also a really interesting thing for a pair of actors to be able to deal with on stage. Is a person who is surprised by it.
I've got some screenshots that I did. I would like to show you. I've just taken some screenshots from the performance, and I've got some clips, some images with Guy in there. So if I could just quickly show you, if I can remember how to share my screen on here. I can't remember myself now. Oh, there we are. That's how I do it. Yeah. So these were just some screenshots. These are some screenshots that I took. I did. These are. I just grabbed these because rather than showing you a video, I just thought I'd show you these screenshots. But let's quickly. Whilst we're talking about the piece with Guy, let's go to the piece with Guy, because you first of all you wanted to do this piece where you met the third card player, the third Cezanne card player, and then Guy comes in here.
I love it.
I think what worked well. I wonder if you talk a bit more about it. But we literally took the classic head and shoulder zoom shot, and put it into a position that really worked.
Yeah, I just think that's because I think there's a kind of comfort, isn't there? Like, I mean, I know Guy talked about it briefly after the show, but actually, it's a really difficult world to navigate if you're not experienced about it, because things tend to be reversed. As a non-performer, things tend to be reversed. You're having to translate what you're doing to what you're seeing. There is a slight delay in vMix. There's a kind of necessary delay in the return. So actually, I think giving a full length shot of somebody is actually really difficult. Like, it took Graham, Graham, I'm sure you found as well. It like that first session we did in the space, it was like, which way do I step? But actually, that much more sort of familiar head and shoulder. We've all sat on Zoom for far too long, but that kind of familiarity of this shot for an audience member is quite comforting and quite, I think, to play.
Yeah. Thinking about how you normally have to navigate in your space by looking at the screen and thinking of yourself in relation to others, and everything is variable. Everything is mutable. Whereas in this space, because we'd got agreed parameters, we could navigate with some comfort, in a way, the space, without having to worry about the screen, the camera.
In the very last shot here, I wonder if we just talk about this one here. Not that one. I think it's this one here, actually. Sorry, where's his hand up here? Oh, here we go. So, at this point, I think he's trying to reach for a glass or something, and so the audience member, I don't know, they seem to be getting more into the sort of, they are part of, feeling part of this scene themselves. They're in this set with you at this point. I think there's another piece here where, of course, at the end you play with him, where I think it's here. Yeah. In that shot there.
Yes, he's trying to catch the ball, isn't he?
Yeah.
Because it's so playful, isn't it? Because I think as an audience member, you're absolutely conscious that there is no chance of you succeeding. So why are you bothering to join in? But at the same time, that's the fun of the game, isn't it? Like, everybody watching and involved is aware that there's no way the ball that I am rolling will end up in his hands. But the fun of it is to just go along with it, and I think that's one of the really engaging things about theatre is that unreality that you can, I don't know. Yes.
What was really fun with the ball roll as well was that we've all got used to watching Giles and Graham, who are used to the fact that it's flipped and it's, that they're moving in a different way. And so when the ball rolls and Guy's always got his hand on the wrong side, it's funny because he's always going the wrong way. But also it kind of exposes the mechanism of what Graham and Giles are doing. And you sort of go, oh, right, they're having to allow for it working on a kind of opposite way in order to get the things lined up. And then you have a new appreciation of how clever it is when they do catch the ball or they do get their hand in the right place for sort of very detailed things.
It's like I was drawing the illusion to like a magician or a circus performer who, the art of presenting that is not to get it right initially, but to save your tricks and construct your theatre so that your tricks come at certain key moments, and you can, but you build failure into it.
A willing suspension of disbelief. That's the quote I've been looking for.
Yeah. Right. I just whizzed through those ones just so you saw them all. That there you go. Catching the ball, saying.
And I think there's we are sort of relatively lucky in that we have been a site-specific theatre company for a long time, and what we tend to do has some audience interaction, because I think it is, I'm sure you find, Graham, but you've done a lot of stuff outside of creation of this kind of style. But I think you learn how to manage how to interact with audiences. It's nice to give them simple tasks in sections. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's actually one of the nice things about the way this piece was constructed, is there was a number of simple things that Guy has to participate in that are never kind of challenging, and you tend to get little kind of breaks between them. And I think that's, like, if we were going to do more with people, I think structurally that's a really good way of doing it.
Yeah, I think if you're certainly in a live physical context, you need to reassure your audience member and know that they're on safe territory, whatever. Even if you're you're pretending not to be kind.
Yes.
It's like there's an implicit understanding that you're holding them in a safe space, and you're not going to expose them unnecessarily. And I think the same is true here. That you're going to look after them.
And you're very much in a dominant position. I mean, you have freedom to move around the whole space, whereas Guy in the middle there is contained within a head and shoulders shot, so he can't move outside of that sort of regular kind of TV box that's around him. He's cropped in to fit in there. So that's.
It'll be interesting to know from Guy's perspective how whether it made him want to move and to explore space. What is that space that he can?
And there's something really nice about his low position, like a little kid, you know. Really sort of there's a kind of power relation, isn't there? Sort of intellect.
There is. I'll just show you some other pictures. You just freely just talk about. I'm quite interested to know what you found difficult, what you found more intuitive, or how things. You know, from the point of view of the piece, and there were certainly some parts that were a challenge for me to sort of switch between scenes for you, but I'm sure you know. But I'm
just going to very briefly say that the shot of Graham with his back to me, I just think is one of the most magical in the whole show. I love it because it's something we just have never done. Just that ability not to like the direct not focusing on a person or a camera. The action of like using attention and using focus to create drama, like it's something that we kind of haven't been able to do, and I just think that's brilliant. So that shot for me is wonderful.
It's a nice shot. It's very good. There's a real tension between the two of you.
Yeah.
But that's something about the dramaturgy here, I think, as well. And this is something that Steve picked up on in an earlier piece that we did. That the characters have got a real sort of tension going on between them. You're building up. I'm wondering if you noticed that. And
I mean, I suppose for me, when I was trying to work out what might be possible and whether there was any kind of dramaturgical structure, shape that we could easily adopt, I kept being drawn to kind of, as I mentioned, kind of pioneering cinema in a way, and thinking about double acts and about slapstick and about that implicit kind of competitivism between characters. So it felt like quite a rich vein in a way. To think of that tension between the two characters and what might be possible. Also, just that simple exploration of space, and about if you've got two different people who are, competing for the same territory.
Yeah, and it sort of it had a kind of a bit of a sense of Godot with the characters, but also that kind of limbo space that the crossroads is in Godot, and that the kind of telematic space is as well. I think it's really interesting to watch. But I think also there's sometimes a sense of, well, you kind of you're alone, but the virtuality really makes you want to to touch, to reach out and all that, and then you sort of reminded, so you go back again, and I think that helps the tension. You see what I mean? That reflection of, no, we are together. No, we're not.
Yes.
It's strange, isn't it? I mean, I'm always a little bit reminded. I like your early cinema reference, Graham, and I because I don't know a lot of it, I'm reminded of like music hall, because I used to work used to do like a lot of technical stuff in a circus university. They used to have a wonderful library of old music hall clips, and I don't know why this is relevant. It just always reminds me. There's one called Baker Sweep, which is basically a man comes on covered in soot with a bag of soot, and a man comes on covered in flour with a bag of flour, and they just throw it at each other for like 3 or 4 minutes and go off. And that was their skit, and that's how they made their living. And somehow, I think the kind of playfulness of this, I don't know why, but it kind of feels very reminiscent of those music hall days where you come in and you show something and you play around with it, and then that's done.
Yeah. Yeah,
Of course,
absolutely.
I feel like where we really missed a trick on this is that we should have had a third person who was in Bicester with Giles.
Yeah.
So we could have had, Guy, audience member who's put in their little box, Graham remotely in Birmingham, Giles in Bicester, and then someone else comes in and you think that they're also not in the same space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're navigating on the same parameters, and then they can literally throw flour on Giles.
Yeah.
And you can have that oh, hang on, how have you done that? And almost try and deliberately keep it going as long as possible that you think it's a trick and they're not in the same place.
Yeah. Or maybe we should have done the reverse. Maybe Graham and I should have been in the same room, and the gag is to try and prove that we're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you do that. And that's the language, isn't it? Somehow, that's this language that we were talking about earlier on.
I'm interested just to ask what you think are the kind of the benefits of this system, if you like. What are the benefits? Not over theatre or whatever, but kind of. You talked. I think Giles, you talked about kind of design freedom. So that's one kind of element. There are those things. I just wanted to reflecting kind of what are the benefits, what are the things that excited you about this that you can't really do on stage or whatever.
I think one of the things for me is the scope for the sort of the things that logistics is partly the kind of, it is in terms of worlds you're creating, it is kind of faster and kind of infinite things that could be in the background and kind of that worlds we can create. I think also the logistics, the sort of, who you can put in that screen. Yeah. That you're not limited by geographically who can I get to this room, into this space, and you're not limited by an audience who can get there. And I think there's kind of magic in that, and the more we can push that with international collaborations or getting people to see friends and family within the shows who are dialing in from all over the country and all over the world, I think that's something that you just can't do in any kind of physical experience, and you can't do with film or TV, and that's sort of one of the things that's really exciting about it. And I think also that like what we're just starting to explore there with the audience member putting Guy in is that idea of being able to immerse an audience member in a world, although in reality they're in front of a green screen. I think I've spent my whole life, any TV show I get really into, I spend a chunk of time thinking, if I was in that show, what character would I be? And what would I do? And the scope that that we're moving towards a world where we could actually create an experience where you are a character in the experience and you really are kind of helping build it, and then you could watch it back afterwards and see yourself in that.
I totally agree. I think that's where this could really take off, imagining that it is a play, an immersive performance piece or film where you are inside it. Imagine that you are the passive character in a bedroom, where around which all the characters are moving, or you're a character in a Pinter play or something.
Yes,
and it's happening.
I think it's also exciting in that I like a bit of VR. But a lot of people don't get on with VR. A lot of, VR is very physically, you do feel quite dizzy afterwards. It can be quite disorientating. And actually this feels like a kind of, in a way it's a similar thing in that you're seeing yourself in a world that's created and you're a part of that. But in a way it's offering something quite different too, because you can see yourself and you can have a record of yourself in that experience. And also you're kind of not in this sort of clamped on thing on your face in order to do it.
Yeah, I think there's a fun thing I think that is worth exploring, which is the idea if you put an audience member in, but you just give them an earpiece and you can tell them what to do. So actually, as much as you can spend the time with the actors manipulating the audience, you could actually do it the other way. You could easily get an interloper to come and relatively controlled, but essentially to cause chaos within a scene that you created. I think that's an interesting thing as well.
Yeah, it might take it back to our that idea that I think it was Graham came up with you could do this in shopping centres. sort of ties into our shed that we're hoping to get around to doing, to make, can we make a green screen shed? Well, actually, can we make a series of, the shed being the basis of, it's a controlled size, you know exactly what your dimensions are. You can create it to have exactly the same setup within every shed. And then what happens if you have 6 sheds in shopping centres around the country?
Yeah.
And, some actors in a studio with the same setup. And
just to note, Gob Squad. Gob Squad did a great show about Andy Warhol, and in the show they actually brought people, audience members up. You just pick them. You know what I mean? Didn't ask for volunteers and made them do Warhol's films, and they gave them earpieces. And then by the end of the thing, that the audience members were playing them on stage, the 4 characters, and they were feeding them the lines and they were saying the lines. It was a really brilliant show, really brilliant show. Anyway, so
I think there's a strand of work like that where audiences are very willing to be, and they understand the rules, and it's built around their capacity for failure as well. I made a show with some students at Birmingham about 15 years ago with where the central character was picked from the audience, was basically auditioned by the cast from the audience.
That's really fun.
And then was killed off at the end. Ended up in a giant wicker basket, and but it was a little just guided through by the audience, and there's lots of potential for that, I think, which would be a really wonderful experience for an audience member.
I'm just going to stop sharing the screen. It's just a few minutes left. I'll just take you through them very quickly. Yeah, I think I've been through them all. So let me just stop sharing that screen now. It's only a few minutes left. I wonder if just one question I want to ask you, and Graham, you touched on it earlier on, but it's really to Giles and Graham, but it's about preparation. And as the performance develops, you mentioned, Graham, that you have notes around you. There, those are sort of self-made, invented ways. I'm wondering, Giles, I mean, how did you prepare, Giles? What was your, particularly for Friday, before Friday? I mean, before the hours leading, the moments leading up to the performance, or when we went live,
Well, I think it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think I'm very much with Graham in that feeling that actually perfection is not what we're striving for. Is that this is an experimental thing, and actually that there is we're experimenting in a way that in which, if stuff goes wrong, it's part of the experiment, not a stop and let's do it again. So whereas like everything we've been doing for X number of months, do you know what I mean? Is you have to be really precise on your lines. It is a little bit closer to television in the fact that you kind of have to clip the ends of people's lines. There's less freedom in the way that you're performing because of the kind of technical demands on creating a piece of curated digital theatre. Whereas this, like Graham and I had a very clear structure, a very clear plan, and we'd been through it that afternoon. But actually, like it's more a series of like note cards about what happens next. And then actually what happens is that you then begin to actually engage with the actor you're working with. And to some extent, it becomes a lot less lonely, I think, than some of the digital theatre that we've done, because you have to be so self-aware in this kind of camera-focused digital theatre that you tend to be listening to other people a bit less, because there's just more of a process you have to do. I find anyway. I've done a lot less of it than Graham, actually. But with this, because I knew, right, all I've got to do for the first minute is I've got to come on and play with a space, and then I go off, and then I come back on and Graham's in my seat, and actually that's kind of, there's such simple motivations, and so that the play then becomes much more interesting as an actor. So, like, bizarrely, the preparation I've done for this project has been significantly less than any other piece of digital theatre I've done. And I'm not saying that that's made it better or worse, more satisfying or less satisfying. It's just interesting that there is another way to go where you can say, well, actually, it doesn't really matter. like the precision doesn't really matter. And you get back to a much more kind of staged, improvisational time experience with another actor than you do tension. I mean, like, you know, obviously we're doing most of what we've done is scripted pieces, and they tend to be classical scripted pieces, so there's a kind of limitation there. You're not in a modern idiom, but it was lovely to be able to say, actually, I know the structure of this, and I know the points at which I need to go and get stuff. So it doesn't, what happens in between doesn't really matter. And, you know, there's technical things you have to set up. I have a piece of paper that's slightly folded so I can deal cards under it. I have to have the drawing of my hat that's around my hand in the right place. But once you've set that up, actually it gives you a lot more freedom.
Yeah, and just picking up on that, I suppose, making a distinction between what I might call kind of dramatic text and work, which is and often that work is, you know, conventionally driven by psychology. It's about, you know, character driven work, and then task driven work, which is another strand, I suppose, of work that I've done in the past, particularly with a company called Stan's Calf, which is very much around activity. It's activity driven, so there are tasks and your performance, any kind of psychology is built in around that structure, and the appeal of that sometimes is just the audience are watching the animal on stage just fulfilling tasks. It's like clear tasks. And that's the appeal, actually, of watching the animal behaving in a space.
Yeah. There's also some kind of, sometimes there are some moments of it can be a bit awkward, but I think I like those awkward moments between the tension between you. And there's a certain kind of stuff, it lends itself to that kind of sort of trying to sort of find a way to sort of communicate, or a way to deal with each other in the same space. There's some really nice, I think there's lots of things you've talked about. We're almost coming to the end of our hour, and you've just answered all my questions. I've just answered 2 questions, but actually you've answered I had 8 questions, and you've answered all of them in what you've been saying. It's been a great experience, really, really good, really enjoyed it. And we've got your recording. I'll send you the recording for sure. I'll send you all the recording. I'll send you the screenshots. I'll send you all the material that I've recorded, so you have it all as well. But we are going to be putting a case study together, and we'll be doing so the team will be doing some reflection on it, and we'll be using some of the comments you're making, and just to try and give a sort of a feel for the whole way it came together, and from our side, what that contributes to the project. And we will have a website launching very, very soon, just as soon as I manage to put the content onto the CMS system that they've built for me. So, and Steve will as well be, I'm sure, inputting all sorts of material as well. So we're very close. We'll have it up and running soon. But the project runs until May next year. So we've got a number of residencies to do. We've got a few already lined up. Red Ladder Theatre in Leeds, and a young sort of cabaret group in Gutter Snipe Theatre, a young group of women in London, and then we've got we're looking at others we're working with Pigeon Theatre, as Steve mentioned, who are based in Manchester. So yes, we've got some room for others. So we're still in sort of discussion about who that might be.
Chat to Graham about Stan's Calf. I'm just going to put Stan's Calf. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. We've absolutely we've loved it. It's been such a lovely project to work on. I have a long term on my long list of things to get around to doing that. You know, hopefully I will eventually. I'm talking with a researcher from University of Oxford about trying to pull together a book of all these different projects we've done and all the different things and case studies and reports that have been written about creations work over the last year and a half. So we may well hit you up at some point and say, would you like to chat more on telepresence? And
well, I'm still in contact with, very much in contact with Pascal Aebischer, because she's now leading another UKRI project, which is a kind of overarching project.
Yeah.
To make sure we're all connecting with each other, all the sorts of arts and humanities projects working with these COVID response awards. So very much working with Pascal, and it's very good of her to put me in contact with you as well. So we'll keep that connection going.
I know we must send her some of this so she can see what
exactly. Yes,
what we got up to.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Can I use this just for a tiny little bit of creation admin? Lucy, did you want to chat today about various things, and what would be a good time for you?
I could do 12?
Yeah, great. Thanks. Sorry, Paul.
Not a problem. Not a problem. I'm going to let Steve enjoy the rest of his evening.
Thanks, Steve.
Whilst
Thanks, Tom.
Great. Well done. Great work. And like I say, I missed the final performance, but I'll see the recording, and it's been really enjoyable seeing your process, and wonderful work. Great stuff.
Like, I'm sure Graham would echo this, but if you do have other questions, just email us.
Thank you, Charles. We'll do.
I think if you're in creative mood to sort of put down some reflections and say, though this is interesting, just send it to us, because we can. We will be putting big reports together and reflecting things on our website and putting academic articles together and all that kind of thing. So the more kind of material we have from you and those reflections, the stronger the material, the stronger the case study.
Great.
Exactly.
Great.
Thanks.
Great.
Great.
I'll say goodbye. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Really fun.
All right. I'm just recording now. That's what I should do.
So is this your call, Paul? Do you want to hang on just for a minute?
Of course. Yes.
Yeah.